one, would you try to get Donovan Mitchell if you're the Knicks? And two, what would you prefer the outcome be if they were to make that move?
Okay, so let's start with the one. The
Mm.
one I'm about to say is not going to be popular for Knicks fans. No, I would not go after Donovan Mitchell if I was the Knicks.
Ooh.
Here's why. I don't. I like Donovan Mitchell. I just think I see the limitations to him as a player, and again, he can still get better, but I'm not sure. He's a volume scorer right now that doesn't really make a lot of people better. Oh, Knicks fans, we've seen this movie before. This has occurred before. We've seen this where we traded for somebody who was a volume scorer, albeit he was a little taller.
Oh,
And I would
no.
say he's a better player.
Shit.
But we've done it before. And then
I ain't messing with that dude's fan base.
and then what happened? What happened? We ended up getting a player that took a lot of our future assets, right? But was probably better served as a number 2 than a number 1. That's my problem. If you're
or he could, I think he could have been. We're talking about Carmelo Anthony.
Yes, we're talking about Carmelo Anthony.
But I think Melo at that time could have been your number 1, but you needed some of the guys that they gave up in order to make that work.
Yeah, Carmelo Anthony.
Like peak Amari was actually a fine.
Yeah, that was fine. That was a fine pairing.
But I think the problem is they gave up Felton, who was playing like an all-star and all that shit.
I think sometimes
you make a good point though.
I think there are guys who are really good in this league and have been really good. They're really great players. Carmelo Anthony's one of them I think of. Paul Pierce is another guy I think of like this, who are really good, but they're not in that like upper echelon of guys. They're just a tier below. Doesn't mean they're bad players. They're just those other guys, they're not KD or LeBron. Yeah. You know what I mean? They don't make the other guys as better around them. They don't lift guys to that other level. I don't see that for Mitchell right now. And I see him a lot in that Melo vein. Really, really good. Not sure he makes somebody better. Now, do I think he could cook if you keep RJ? The two of them together. I do kind of like that. Especially if the Knicks could go get a point guard. I don't mind that. Now, if you tell me they're going to give up Julius Randle in this trade, and they probably assume Obi probably would go too. There's going to be some young guys that are going to go. I would assume that.
Randle and Obi would go there, though?
I don't know what else. I'm thinking you're probably at least, if you're giving up Randle, which I'm still with you.
You're going to need his money, I think.
Yeah, you would need his money. But that's almost why signing RJ to an extension and then getting him out for Mitchell makes a lot of sense. It's hard for me to see the Jazz not asking for Mitchell. Asking for Barrett. That's very hard for me to see them not doing. But if they do take, if it's Randle, some young players, whether it's Grimes, Quickly, and picks, I still don't love it. I know I'm in the minority of Knicks fans here. I know I'm in the minority of Knicks fans, but I think I'm thinking of this from the perspective of I've seen this movie before. I've seen what's happened. We traded for a star that's not quite that dude. And that's what I think happens here. You're getting a really good player. In my opinion, he's better off for Mitchell and the situation of what Miami's in.
I was going to say that.
I think it's better for him because he doesn't have to go there and be that dude. He's going to be a really good dude, but he's got another good scorer with him to support, and Jimmy Butler, who, as I said earlier in this podcast, is playoff proven. I think you put Mitchell with somebody else like that, fine. The Knicks don't have that yet. It could be RJ.
Yeah.
I don't know that. It could be. I'm just saying, this is my real honest thing with the Knicks, and I'll let you go, B.
Yeah.
My thing is like, I'm actually more into just stick the course. I have an idea what I think they should do in this draft. You and I have talked about this in the group chat. I think they should trade up. I think that's where you make the move and get the picks. Go if you think Jaden Ivey's that dude, which I think he can be. Go get that dude at point guard. Build him with RJ around your other young talent. Now, a lot of that has to do on the coach. If he's going to play the young talent. Shout out to my man Greg, who might be watching. He knows I know how he feels about that. If he's going to do that, I'm more about that. I think there's this idea of the Knicks have to go get a star. And I'm like, why? Like, why don't you find that star in the draft? Identify that guy you think is really good with RJ, with Obi, with the guys you have, and build and play and keep that exciting young core there and build that way. You don't have to go trade for this star. I talked about this yesterday on SOY New York Post with Mark Berman. And, he's like, he thinks the Knicks want to go for the star. And that's been part of their DNA and culture, and the fans want that. But I'm like, yo, you can find that star. That could be Jaden Ivey. Go for it. Take a swing in that way and build around the young core that you have without having to give up too much of that core. I just think that's the better move. You build your identity, you build your culture that way. So I'm out on Donovan Mitchell. I wouldn't do it if I'm the Knicks. I don't think it's best for them. But I know other Knicks fans are not going to agree. So it is what it is.
To your point, because you make a great one where you say, like, basically, Donovan Mitchell going to the Knicks, it's like, all right, now what with your build? It's like, all right, you're building around Donovan Mitchell and either RJ Barrett or Julius Randle. What does that really do in an Eastern Conference where, the Celtics, the Heat, the Bucks, presumably the Sixers, we think aren't going anywhere. The Raptors will see. The Bulls, I don't have much faith in them. The Hawks, maybe they'll bounce back. The Cavaliers may get a little bit better, and the Nets are a wild card TBD. And it's like, are the Knicks going to leapfrog enough of those teams by getting Donovan Mitchell? The answer is probably not. So right. I think, and the reason why he makes sense to Miami is because he's a missing piece in Miami. They need his shot creation. They need his alpha offense. So then it becomes.
See, that's the point. That's the point right there, Brian, for me.
Yeah.
It's that you hit the nail on the head. When you go and trade for the star, but they're to start the process, and they're not the piece, they're not the missing piece, is the case with Miami. It's two different things in terms of team building. The Knicks have done this before. Get the pieces you need, build the culture, and then you maybe want to go and get a star. Maybe you look at your team and say, oh, we could tweak here. Then we maybe go and grab this guy and add him into what we already have. The Knicks, my thing is you built a culture of playing hard the previous year. You had a disappointing year this year with some signings that didn't work. But you saw some things from the young dudes at the end of the season.
Yes.
Continue that. You don't have to abandon that. There's some good things there. Continue it, build that culture. But I think what the Knicks need to, if they're going to make a swing, go swing for a Jaden Ivey. Identify a young guy that you think could come in and be a spark or part of this core or be that guy and do it. Go get that guy.
Be young, fun, and exciting. And when those other teams that we mentioned, some of those contenders sort of fade out, age out, doesn't work out for them, whatever, in a couple of years, then you have your ascension. Because I love the idea of Jaden Ivey and RJ Barrett together at Madison Square Garden. And even from just a marketing perspective, like the Garden would love these two guys with Obi Toppin, by the way. I should also mention that because I've seen more from Obi Toppin, particularly the last, 2-3 months of the regular season last year, where I was like, oh, this can be your future power forward, sort of Amari Light sort of guy, right? Like next to the other guys, like he can be John Collins-ish to some extent, right? We'll see about his jumper, but like I don't think that's an unfair comparison. And it's like if you get, I like that idea more because it just makes sense for where you are. And it's like, yo, if you do that, I think Knicks fans will be fine because it's like, granted, you had the playoffs, the taste of the playoffs, and it sucks to sort of backpedal, but you're building around like a true young core. Like RJ Barrett's fucking like 22. I think he might.
No, he's not even 22.
I think he's about to turn 22 like this or next month or something like that.
Yeah.
But he's really young. Really
young. That's what I'm saying.
Like,
keep the young core. If you're gonna make a move, if you can go get if I'm the Knicks, I'm exploring every opportunity. I'll keep saying it again. I'll explore every opportunity to get Ivy. Keep this young core. You saw how exciting it was to see the young guys at the end of the season, how they were playing when Tibbs played them, because I know that's the other key. And listen, I'm going to say this right now. This is a big next season, no matter what happens in the offseason, is big for Tibbs. If he's not going to play the young guys, man, get him out of here. Get him out of here.
Yeah.
This needs to be about building culture. The Knicks have done some things, I think, actually the right way and haven't hit the panic button. Don't do it this offseason. And from what I'm hearing, I hear certain things that I think are good. Like I'm hearing they're like, hey, Mitchell Robinson, they got a number. They're willing to sign him and a number they're not willing to go above. And I think it's actually more likely that he doesn't come back to the Knicks.
I agree.
Because I think they're actually valuing how they pay their centers. And I actually think that's the right move. Because I like Jericho Sims.
Play Nerlens Noel until Jericho Sims takes over.
Yeah, it's fine. And I think those are smart.
Or if you find another, if you end up getting another center that you like, whatever. But I think Jericho Sims has shown that he's capable of at least being competent.
Make the smart moves. Make the right moves. You don't always have to go grab the star right now. I think there's too much of what happens in New York. And so, for me, I'm out on Donovan Mitchell. I just don't think he's the guy you go after and get. I just don't think. I see it as And I'm not saying he's Melo because I actually think Melo's a better player. So I want people to be very clear on what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's Melo. I'm saying he doesn't raise other people's game. He's not a playmaker that makes people better in that way. He's a volume scorer. Melo had the height, and he's a better scorer. But Donovan Mitchell is a fantastic player. I just think he fits better on a team like the Heat and what they're trying to do now than the Knicks and what they're trying to do now.
And,
So for me, yeah, I'd be out on that.